Let me save some of you 10 minutes. If you want to keep things simple, get a bottle of Tomarite or any tomato feed from your local garden center. Use it at about half the dilution rate on the bottle, but only once the plant is established in its final pot. Done, that alone will work for most people. But if you want consistent results, this is the bit that matters. Most beginners don't mess up the product. They mess up the timing and the frequency. In this video, I'll show you when to start, how often to feed, and the 3 mistakes that cause big plants with no pods, blossom end rot, and burnt roots. This is part of my From Seed to Source series playlist. Link is down in the description below. I've been growing chilies since 2006. I've tried loads of feeding approaches, and this is the simple version that works year after year. In the next video, I'll cover the science, but today it's the practical plan. One thing I want to get across early. With chilies, most beginners feed too much and too soon. A good soil mix does most of the work. Liquid feed is a top-up, not the main course. If you keep it light and consistent, you avoid most of the classic problems. Every fertilizer has 3 numbers on the label. Those are the NPK ratio. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These are expressed as a percentage by weight. A fertilizer labeled 415 contains 4% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 5% potassium. Higher numbers mean more concentrated, which means you use less and need to be more careful with dosing. Here's what each one does. Nitrogen drives leafy growth. It builds the plant. Phosphorus supports the roots and early development. Potassium supports flowering and fruiting, fruit quality, and how well the plant copes with stress like heat and drought. If you remember one thing, it's this. Once the plant starts flowering, potassium matters a lot. For chilies, I aim for roughly 3 parts nitrogen, 1 part phosphorus, and 5 parts potassium. Potassium should be the highest number, especially once fruiting starts. I explained the why in the science video that's coming out next, but for now, it's a solid rule of thumb for getting pods and keeping the plant productive. Tomarite. NPK is 4, 1.3, 6.6. That's close to my recommended ratio. It's cheap and you can find it almost anywhere. This is my default recommendation for beginners. If you can buy only 1 liquid feed, buy this or equivalent tomato feed. Seaweed fertilizer. This is low in NPK but packed with micronutrients and natural growth hormones. I use this at seedling stage and it's a gentle feed before transitioning to something stronger. Think of it as a starter, not a full feed. Chili Focus. This has an NPK of 2.7, 1, and 4.4. It's formulated specifically for capsicum, so chilies and peppers. It's a bit less concentrated than Tomarite, so you use more per liter of water, but it's tailored for what chilies need. I've had consistently good results with it, and the 5-liter jugs are actually pretty good value. This used to be a lot more expensive when I first started. Miracle Grow. This has an NPK of 24, 3.5, and 13.3. It is a dry fertilizer, so it is extremely strong. That nitrogen level, though, is extremely high. It'll push vegetative growth hard. Once your plants start flowering, though, that much nitrogen works against you. If it's all you can get, cut the dosage significantly and switch to something else once flowering begins. Not my favorite. If you've ever seen a dark sunken patch at the bottom of your fruit, that's blossom end rot. It's not a disease, it's a calcium delivery problem. Calcium moves passively through the plant in the water stream and goes preferentially to the leaves, not the fruit. When the plant is stressed, inconsistent watering, high temperatures, and rapid growth, the fruit misses out. Here's the thing that trips people up. It's rarely no calcium in the soil, it's usually delivery. So the irregular watering, heat stress, and heavy feeding can all stop calcium getting to the fruit. Overfeeding also builds up salts around the roots, which makes the whole uptake problem even worse. My approach is preventative. I work fish blood and bone meal into my soil mix at the start. It provides a slow release source of calcium that persists through the growing period. That, combined with consistent watering, is your best defense. Don't bother with ground eggshells mid-season. They break down far too slowly to help. Magnesium is the central atom in chlorophyll. Without it, photosynthesis doesn't happen. And here's the key. Calcium and magnesium need each other for proper uptake. An excess of one blocks the other. That's why things like CalMag exist. Calcium, magnesium. My preferred supplement is Epsom salts or magnesium sulfate, which we have a bag of it over here. For a foliar spray, start mild, about 1 teaspoon per liter. Spray every 2 to 3 weeks if you actually see signs of magnesium deficiency, or if you know your mix tends to run low. It's cheap and effective, but don't overdo it. If the leaves look healthy, lush and green, don't spray it just because it's on a schedule. I sometimes add a small amount of magnesium into my soil mix as well, but for beginners, the foliar spray is the easiest way to correct a problem without messing up the soil balance. Beyond NPK, calcium, and magnesium, your plants also need small amounts of iron, manganese, copper, zinc, boron, and molybdenum. You'll never need much of any of them, but a deficiency in even one can limit growth and reduce fruit quality. Iron deficiency shows up as a yellowing of young leaves with green veins, similar to magnesium, but on the new growth rather than the old. Boron plays a role in pollen viability and fruit set. Molybdenum is involved in nitrogen metabolism within the plant. The good news is you probably don't need to think about these individually. A seaweed feed in the early season provides a broad spectrum of trace elements, and a complete feed like Tomerite or Chilli Focus includes them as well. If you're using a soil mix with compost and organic matter, you've already got a solid baseline. Micronutrient deficiencies in container-grown chilies are pretty rare if you're feeding with a decent product. Where it can become an issue is if you're growing in the same soil year after year without replenishing organic matter, or if your pH drifts too high and locks out iron and manganese. But for most growers, following this guide, it's covered. If you've got a good soil mix, you don't need to feed much at all until your plants are in their final pots. Every time you pot up into fresh compost, the clock resets. A decent mix with organic amendments like chicken manure pellets and fish blood and bone will sustain your plants for 3 to 4 weeks without any supplemental feeding. Chicken manure pellets release nutrients over weeks, not days. So after a pot up into amended compost, you've already got a feeding buffer built in. And if you're potting up 2 to 3 times through the season, which I do recommend, each time into a fresh mix, those feeding windows are overlapping. So in practice, you shouldn't need to start a proper liquid feeding regime until 3 to 4 weeks after the last pot up into your final container. Here's how that plays out across the season. Seedling stage. Use plain water. Your seed compost has enough nutrients in it. After a couple of weeks, you can introduce a very light seaweed feed at 1/4 strength if you like, but it's not essential. The main thing is don't overfeed young plants. A quick note on water. Use rainwater if you can. If you're on tap water, fill a bucket, let it sit for 24 hours to let the chlorine off gas. Some areas use chloramine instead of chlorine, and that doesn't gas off. If you notice issues and suspect your water, use rainwater or run tap water through a carbon filter. Potting up stages. Each time you move into fresh compost with your soil mix, the plant has everything it needs. The occasional light seaweed feed is fine, but save the main feeding for later. Your soil is doing the work. Final pot, 3 to 4 weeks in. This is when supplemental feeding starts to matter. The slow release amendments in your soil are beginning to deplete. Bring in your main feed, Tomerite, Chilli Focus, or whatever you're using, at half strength. Build up to full strength as the plant demands it. Start your Epsom salt foliar sprays if you haven't already. I don't feed every watering. I would recommend alternating, one watering with feed, one without. It gives the plant time to process what you've given it. Late season. Reduce feeding frequency as well as watering because your plant doesn't need as much as it did during the heavy growth phase. The plants are winding down and so is the season. Let the remaining fruit ripen on what's already in the system. A few things I've learned the hard way. Never feed dry soil. If your compost is bone dry, water with plain water first and let it soak in for 20 to 30 minutes. Then come back with your feed. Concentrated nutrients in dry compost can burn roots, especially on younger plants. If you're ever unsure, go weaker on the feed. You can always add more next time. Your plants will tell you when something's wrong. Yellowing leaves at the bottom usually means nitrogen deficiency, and that is basically the plant pulling nutrients from the old growth to feed the new growth up top. Yellowing between veins while the veins stay green is typically magnesium. Curling or browning leaf edges can point to potassium deficiency or salt buildup. Learn to read your plants and you'll catch problems early. And always remember, you can add more, but you can't take it away. If you're ever unsure about dosage, go weaker. Half strength is almost always safer than full strength. Chilies aren't as hungry as tomatoes. A slightly underfed plant will still produce plenty of pods. An overfed one might give you nothing but leaves. Sometimes less is more. If you only remember 3 things from this video, it's this. First, don't start liquid feeding until your plants are established in their final pots. And even then, wait 3 to 4 weeks after that last pot up. Second, start at half strength. You can always increase later, but you can't undo an overfeed. And third, don't feed every watering. Alternate, one watering with feed, one with plain water. Do these 3 things and you'll avoid most beginner problems and you'll still get plenty of pods. Now, if you want to understand the science behind all of this, why I recommend these specific ratios and what happens when you get the nitrogen to potassium balance wrong, and how the research actually backs up what I've told you, I've made a whole separate video on that. It's worth watching. It's not required. Everything I've covered today will get you growing, but hey, if you want to learn more, then there you go. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments, and until the next video, stay spicy.